Hey, everybody, welcome to the stream. I'm feeling great today. I am looking forward to the stream a lot, having a great day. Hope you are too. And I've got some exciting new toys to play with. I had entered the GitHub Copilot chat beta waitlist. I got an email saying, hey, you're accepted into the Copilot beta program. So that was pretty great. Here we go. We've got GitHub Copilot Chat is the main new feature that I'm most excited about in the GitHub Copilot private beta. And it is very similar to ChatGPT in the sense that I can use natural language here to ask it questions, but it also has some very cool features specifically just for coding. You know, ChatGPT is meant for more than just coding. Copilot Chat is specifically for coders and developers. So what I thought we'd try to start with is just what I did on the last stream, is ask it to give me a FizzBuzz implementation and see how it does against ChatGPT. So let's see if it works here.
Give me a FizzBuzz implementation for C#.
The font's kind of small down there, but there you go. I'll give the exact same question to ChatGPT. Well, for one thing, the GitHub Copilot came back pretty quickly with that answer. So I don't know if maybe it's cached, maybe this is a common question, but that's one difference I'm seeing right now just with FizzBuzz is very, very fast. So it looks like, except for the static main and class program, that these are basically identical implementations. So there you go. So GitHub Copilot a little faster, well, a lot faster in this case. That may be due to a number of factors, but so we've already got some points of comparison. So let's bring up, I was working on the auth controller last time. So let's bring up this. Now I'm going to go highlight this generate JWT token. Right click, now I've got this ask Copilot right here. So I can ask Copilot a question about the code that I highlighted. Critique this code and identify any potential bugs and how to fix them. This code appears to be functional and complete. One potential bug is that the login method is not performing any database validation of user credentials. So that's interesting because I didn't highlight the login function. I only highlighted generate JWT token. So it kind of went outside its bounds there. Yeah, I wonder if Ask Copilot doesn't actually use the code that I highlighted. Basically telling me what I already know is that this is not a complete implementation, but it also didn't highlight any bugs or anything that might be a problem in this code. So it's kind of good. The only thing else I'd highlight is that these keys right here are hard-coded, which is potentially a maintenance problem, potentially a coupling problem, because I have them hard-coded elsewhere in the program. And that's actually something I have a ticket for back in my little GitHub projects board. Oh, yeah, here it is. Yeah, move issuer, audience, and secret into app settings because they're hard-coded right now. So that's definitely on the horizon, something I need to fix. So that's something that GitHub Copilot can do. Pretty cool, and might use it a little more today as we get going. With that in mind, let's get back to work on Conduit. For instance, I need to add tests, and I need to add a database check in here, right? Because it's not actually checking anything. Anyone can hit this endpoint and get a token, and that's not really what this endpoint is meant to accomplish. That probably would pass Conduit's tests, but it's not a real-world function, right? That's the whole idea with this real-world project. If you are joining for the first time or watching this for the first time, Conduit is actually a open-source real-world demo project, a real-world example app. So, you know, there's lots of hello world and examples and to-do lists out there. This is more of an application that is attempting to be a little more real-world without being, you know, super complex. It has front ends and back ends and full stacks. If you're looking to build something, let's say you're looking to build an application with Express and Bookshelf, but you've never done that before, or you're curious to see if there's something you could do better with Express, or you use Express but not Bookshelf, something like that. So it's the same set of operations, functionality across the board. This is for ASP.NET Core 7 and Couchbase. And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm working on the implementation of that real-world starter kit. Real-world example app. I use the starter kit. So I forked that, and I'm already starting on that. And going to check the user in the database. I don't have that there yet. And it's going to get a token JWT token, which is a form of authorization. And I tested that with a throwaway endpoint right here called delete me and hello, because I'm going to get rid of this. But if I put this authorized tag on there, the user must have a valid JWT token to access this endpoint. We're going to work on this part right here, checking the database to make sure the credentials are valid. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to connect to Couchbase. So let's go ahead and see what kind of NuGet packages are out there for Couchbase. And I know I'm going to add, but I'm just going to go through them here in NuGet. So the very first result is the most popular, Couchbase Net Client. This is the .NET SDK for working with Couchbase. This is the bare minimum you need to interact with Couchbase from a .NET application. So this is all the operations like get, delete, query, text search, all those sorts of things, managing buckets, scopes, and collections, all that sort of stuff. And the last one, dependency injection. This one is gradually creeping up in popularity as well, because it's a little bit newer than these other libraries, but it's definitely very popular. It's dependency injection for Couchbase, which I plan to use. Dependency injection is built into ASP.NET these days, so no reason not to add it in. So there's going to go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to add Couchbase Net Client. I'm going to add it anyway, since I might need that later for tests. So now I need to inject Couchbase into possibly this controller. Let's go to the program to get it set up. But let's also let's try asking Copilot. So
how do I add BI for Couchbase with the Couchbase dependency injection library into my program? That's yes. See what it has to say.
Okay, so add the library. Yep. Okay. And anyway, I can use this code. I can say, all right, I can add this line right here, services.add Couchbase. It's going to be after add controllers. Let me put it after Swagger, after auth. That's totally fine. Put it right in here. And I need to say, of course, builder.services. And configuration is also not something I have. I have to say builder.configuration. So that's going to get a section of configuration code from app settings, or from wherever, environment variables or app settings.developer, whatever is available. And let's see if ChatGPT can help us with the app settings. Okay.
What should the Couchbase section in app settings.json look like?
So I think this looks right. Bucket seems like a bit too much. Just I know from experience I don't need to have all that configuration in there. What I really need is bucket name, probably, so I'm going to stick with. I don't need to go all that deep of configuration. And this is Conduit, so I'm going to call this bucket Conduit.
Username and password, I'm just going to stick to administrator password. Now, I actually need to go back and replace these with the real credentials. And I'm also going to put this into the app settings JSON, not the non-developer one. But I'm going to log in to my Couchbase Capella or data tools, and then I go into buckets. So buckets is kind of like the Couchbase equivalent of a database or a catalog. This is a high-level organization, and also includes configuration like what kind of storage engine, how much RAM are you going to give it, etc. So I'm going to create a bucket here. I'm going to call it Conduit. I do want memory and disk, so the difference here is memory only would be great for caching or kind of transitory processing of data that's you don't really care if it lasts a long time. Actually, you probably don't want it to last a long time, that sort of thing. Storage backend. Got two options here, CouchStore and Magma. Magma is designed for very, very large data sets that will not fit into memory. For my use case, CouchStore is totally fine. I don't plan to have a ton of data in here. For my purposes, I'm going to stick with CouchStore. For this implementation, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to make a noticeable difference. Memory quota, same sort of thing. So again, if I want to improve the amount of caching that's available to my database, I want to maybe jack this up. So every bucket in Couchbase has a built-in cache, so you have to give it some sort of memory. I'm going to stick with 100 here. Conflict resolution, it's not going to be a problem. I'm not going to use XDCR. I'm not going to replicate between data centers, for instance. Durability level, again, this is probably fine to leave at none. Replicas, maybe it's not available in the trial. Flush, don't really care about Flush, not going to use it. Not going to use TTL either. Again, that might be great for caching or other use cases where your data is only living for a certain amount of time. So there we go. We've got the Conduit bucket created. And we'll talk about what I'm going to put in that bucket in terms of scopes and then further collections. We're not going to get that far just yet, but we'll have to think about that very, very shortly. So now I'm going to take this off the screen because I need to put some credentials in. And I don't want you to see those credentials. Okay. So over on settings, there is a database access. So I can create a database access, kind of like a username. I can show you this, in fact. So this is, so I already created the bucket. Now I'm going to create, which is essentially a username or credentials, but there are two different things here for accessing data. A user is really what I'm using right now to get into this web-based screen. A database access is what my application will be used to connecting. So I'm going to call this SVC and Conduit. And then I can put in a password, and I'll do that off the screen here. I can select which bucket it has access to, so I can choose Conduit, Twitch Chat, or all. I'm just going to stick to Conduit, obviously. All scopes, I'm probably only going to use the one default scope, and read-write, because I will be doing reads and writes. So I can't create this yet because I don't have a password. So take this off screen. Okay. So that's all I need with Capella right now. I'll have to come back to buckets here in a second. But okay. So once that's in app settings, this code right here is going to pull those settings from the app settings and connect to Couchbase. So now what's happening is if we go back to our Copilot, up here, there are some options with the Couchbase dependency injection. So what I've got right now might be enough. I can also add a bucket or some singleton of a certain bucket objects. I don't necessarily need to do that right now. And maybe you'll see what I mean when I get going here. But what this does is it's going to make a service available for Couchbase in dependency injection. The other thing I need to do is clean this up. So when the app closes, I want to close the database connection as well. Otherwise, there could be potential for memory leaks or errors, things like that. Always a good practice with any database. So let's see if Copilot can help me.
Create some code for program.cs that will close the Couchbase dependency, close the Couchbase connection using the Couchbase dependency injection classes.
What I think's going on here is that GitHub Copilot chat, like ChatGPT, is kind of trained at a point in time. And anything that happens after that, it doesn't really know about. All right, so this is the actual code it should be doing. app.lifetime.application stopped. And then register. And then instead of just app dispose, I don't think I want to app dispose anyway. That's kind of a weird thing. But I want to get the lifetime service. Okay, so this will close down the Couchbase service when the application itself stops. And I think that's all I need to get going. So over here in auth controller, so I think what I can do if I wanted to.
Bucket provider. I could put that right here. And this bucket provider is part of the dependency injection. And then what I can do here is I can start using that bucket provider. I can say var bucket equals bucket provider dot get bucket. And now what I can do is I need to do two things. So I need to make sure credentials match. And I also need to return a user with a JWT token. This login view model corresponds to that. So I've got this user, they kind of structured this way, and then email and password as part of that. Okay, so that's the login model. So that corresponds to this. What's going to do is it's going to return a user. So if you look at user being returned for authentication. So it returns email, token, username, bio, and image. And I think that's the only time users return. So there's also this thing called profile, which is a little different than user. It's a different view. So
but it has some of the same fields. So username, bio, image, and following. Following is a little different. It's not returned by user for authentication. So I think these are going to basically be two views of the same piece of data. I think that's how I'm going to model it. So add a new project. This is going to be a class library. And class library, there we go. I'm going to call this conduit.migrations. Okay. And then in Conduit Migrations, I've got a NuGet package. Yeah, there it is. You can see 98 downloads with a package description of package description. So this is cutting edge stuff, 001 alpha, right? But I'll go ahead and install this. And this is inspired by, not a fork of or anything, but inspired by the Fluent Migrator project. This is a command line tool that I wrote to run those migrations. And what you do is you give it a name of an assembly, so a DLL file, a connection string, username, password, bucket name, and then you can give these optional, if I want to go a certain migration level up or down, that sort of thing. So I'm going to migrate everything up. That is the default. I don't have to specify a direction or limit if I don't want to do that. So I'm going to default everything up. So this is my batch file. So I need to create a second endpoint is what I need to do. To do that, I need to go and get this registration one into progress. So this is registration. Oh, okay. Yeah. That needs to go in there. Okay, we'll try it again. Back here to register, registering Jake from State Farm. Back to my data. There's Jake, and now he has this nice password salt in there. And so if I go back to login, I'll try to log him in, and it should work this time, and it does. Okay. So we've got two endpoints working now. We've got the login, and we've got registration. And they're both working, and they're creating the user in the database right here. And then we can, once we have this information going forward, you can use that to authorize the other endpoint. So then if I go back to my GitHub repo, I'm just kind of interested to see how that affects the GitHub projects, or the GitHub issues, I guess. So here are the issues. Yeah, look at that. Just number one, number two, it showed up there. So the next thing I want to do is possibly using MediatR, because there's a lot of stuff in my endpoint right now. Look at all this stuff right here. I want actions in my controllers to be very, very thin as possible. It'll make them easier to test, and it will be less stuff to go wrong in ASP.NET. Let's talk about what MediatR is first. It's just a way to pass messages between parts of your code base, and to do so without something like RabbitMQ or Kafka or something like that. It's just messaging in process between, I'll say, C# classes, right? And you can do request response, which I mostly will be doing that, commands, queries. You can do notifications, all kinds of dispatching options there. It's something I use already in the Twitch bot, and it kind of helps organize code a little better. And like I said, to keep the controller methods, I'm going to use MediatR to try to improve that a little bit. So how do we get started with MediatR? We add it via NuGet. This is called MediatR, if you will. Okay, and MediatR. All right, so then basically all I just do is I have to add some dependency injection stuff. So I can do this right here. If I go back to my program, it's over in services again. So we'll do builder.services, add MediatR, and we just have to pick a class that has all the MediatR classes in it, and that would be this one. This has startup, but we can just say program as well. Be totally fine. So it's going to look through, it's going to find this class, get the assembly from whatever that class is in. So an assembly, you can kind of think of that as a compiled version of this project. So it's going to look in this project for any MediatR services that it needs to know about. It is. Just one little, this is why unit tests are so important, or testing in general is so important. There's just one little character completely messed up my my authorization workflow there. So, okay, back to registration. Success, login, success. Okay, there we go. So all we did here was add MediatR, and I added the services folder. Might need to rethink that structure. Auth controller, look, I went from this huge 113 lines down to 37 lines. Fantastic. User model, so took out all the salt stuff, took out the token, don't need that. That was vestigial. Here's the program. All I did here was add MediatR and add auth service as a function. All right, we're going to wrap up now. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody.